The weight of choice. Her hands hovered over the rack, chrome and rubber, fixed and familiar. She'd been here before. This moment, this decision, standing in her garage gym, trying to figure out why progress felt so hard when everyone else made it look so easy. She'd bought the traditional dumbbells 2 years ago. Heavy, honest. The kind you see in old boxing movies, the kind that don't lie about how strong you are. But lately, every workout felt like a negotiation with space, with time, with the growing sense that maybe she'd built her entire routine around the wrong foundation. What she didn't know yet was that this wasn't about strength at all. It was about something quieter, something most of us miss until we're already stuck. Her neighbor had adjustable dumbbells, the kind that click and shift, that promise convenience and adaptability. She'd rolled her eyes the first time she saw them, too modern, too gimmicky, too easy. But watching him move through his workouts, never pausing to swap weights, never losing momentum, she started to wonder if she'd confused tradition with effectiveness. Maybe the resistance wasn't in her muscles. Maybe it was in her setup. She thought back to the beginning. When she first started lifting, the fixed weights made sense. Pick a weight, do your reps, feel the burn. Simple, clear. No adjustments, no overthinking. There was something grounding about that simplicity, something that made her feel like she was doing it right just by showing up. But as her goals shifted, as she wanted to build endurance one day and max strength the next, the system started to crack. Changing exercises meant walking back and forth across the room. Supersets turned into interruptions. Flow became friction. Part of her still believed that real lifters used real weights, fixed, unchanging, proven. She laughed at herself, realizing she'd been holding on to an idea, not a strategy. Researchers at the American Council on Exercise found something unexpected when they studied home gym effectiveness. It wasn't the equipment that determined results. It was consistency. And consistency depended almost entirely on friction. Every extra step, every moment of hesitation, every small inconvenience compounded into resistance. That had nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with momentum. Traditional dumbbells work. No one disputes that. They're durable, stable, tactile in a way that feels earned. When you lift a 40-pound dumbbell, you know exactly what you're holding. There's no guessing, no adjusting, no wondering if the mechanism will hold. Just you and the weight. But here's what no one talks about. Owning a full set means owning 50 to 100 pounds of iron per pair. It means racks, space, organization. It means deciding in advance how much room your fitness deserves in your life. For some people, that's not a problem. For others, it's the reason they stop. She looked around her garage, bikes hanging on the wall, boxes stacked in corners, a lawnmower wedged near the door. Her dumbbells, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 pounds, took up an entire corner. And she knew if she wanted to keep progressing, she'd need more. What would you do in that moment? She thought about the adjustable set again, one piece of equipment, 5 to 50 pounds. Dial it, lift it, move on. No walking, no searching, no excuses. But something still held her back. She'd heard the complaints, the clunky dial systems, the cheap plastic braking after a few months, the uneven weight distribution that made exercises feel awkward, the rattling during reps that reminded you this wasn't the real thing. Then came the research phase and the real test. She started reading reviews. Not the 5-star hype or the 1-star rage. She wanted the middle, the honest users who'd lived with their choice for months. What she found surprised her. The technology had evolved. Magnetic pin systems, steel construction, ergonomic grips that balanced as well as fixed weights. Some models even connected to apps, tracking volume and progression automatically. But the bad ones were still out there. Cheap knockoffs that broke within weeks. Designs that looked sleek but felt unstable mid-lift. Models that promised 50 pounds but felt like 40 because of poor calibration. The difference wasn't in the concept, it was in the execution. Sometimes we only understand a tool when we stop asking if it works and start asking how we'll actually use it. She borrowed her neighbor's set for a week. Bowflex Select Tech. Mid-range price, solid reviews, nothing flashy. The first workout felt strange. Too easy to change weight. Too smooth. She almost didn't trust it. By day 3, she stopped noticing the mechanism. She noticed her workout. Drop sets that used to take 5 minutes now took 90 seconds. Circuit training that used to break her flow now felt seamless. Her heart rate stayed elevated. Her focus stayed sharp. She wasn't stronger yet, but she was training differently, and that difference mattered. What surprised her most wasn't just how the adjustable dumbbells improved her experience with progressive overload, but how everything started to feel different once she switched to the right method. She wasn't expecting such a clear change in workout rhythm, and honestly, she tested different setups more than a few times before she figured out what really worked. This isn't a promotion, just sharing real results that made a noticeable difference for her training consistency. She left a note for her neighbor, asking where he'd bought his set, half embarrassed she'd judged them so quickly. But she didn't throw out her traditional weights. Not yet. Because here's what she realized. The question was never which is better. The question was better for what? Traditional dumbbells win on durability. Drop them, they survive. They win on cost per pound if you're only using a narrow range. They win on simplicity if you hate technology and just want to lift. And they win on the psychological benefit of knowing exactly what you're holding. No guessing, no calibration, no trust required. Adjustable dumbbells win on space. They win on versatility. They win on momentum and flow. And they win on scalability. If you're a beginner who might need 5 pounds today and 25 pounds in 6 months, buying 15 pairs of fixed weights makes no sense. But what happens when the injury comes and the real test begins? She pulled her shoulder 3 months in. Nothing severe, just a tweak from pushing too hard on an overhead press. The physical therapist recommended light, controlled movements, high reps, low weight, slow eccentrics. With her old setup, that would have meant using her lightest dumbbells for everything. Boring, demotivating, barely challenging. With the adjustable set, she could fine-tune. 7 pounds for rehab exercises, 12 for accessory work, 18 when she felt ready. The recovery stayed interesting. The progress stayed visible. Part of her wondered if she would have stuck with rehab at all if every session meant digging out the same 5-pound weights. She'd read somewhere that the best fitness equipment isn't the one that works hardest. It's the one you'll actually use consistently. That sounded like a cop-out at first, a way to justify mediocrity. But after 6 months of training, she understood. Perfection doesn't sustain behavior. Friction does, and the less friction between intention and action, the more often action happens. Researchers at Stanford found something similar. When routine meets meaning, consistency finally sticks. But if the routine itself becomes a barrier, if you spend more time setting up than working out, the meaning fades. Motivation can't outrun inconvenience forever, so she made her choice. Not because one option was objectively better, but because she knew herself well enough to know what she'd actually keep doing. She kept 1 pair of traditional dumbbells, her 20-pounders, the ones she'd started with, the ones that still felt like proof she'd shown up when it was hardest. And she bought the adjustable set, not as a replacement, as an evolution. Sometimes progress doesn't look like abandoning what worked. It looks like adding what works better. Her morning workouts changed, faster, tighter, more focused. She stopped procrastinating the setup. She stopped dreading the transitions. The workouts became something she looked forward to, not something she had to negotiate with herself about. And somewhere between the failures and the quiet mornings, she found rhythm and peace. When she looked in the mirror again, it wasn't her reflection that had changed. It was what she believed about herself. Not that she needed the perfect equipment, but that she deserved a system that respected her time, her goals, and her willingness to keep showing up. Tell us what part of this story resonated most and where you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.